Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which has been chosen by you guys. I had two video ideas in mind that I could not decide between, so I decided to put it to a poll on YouTube, which you may or may not have seen and voted in. So the two options that I asked you guys to vote on for which video you would rather watch were either me telling you guys if I would recommend every book I've read this year with either a yes, no, or maybe, or having me rank every book that I read this year from my least to most favorite. And every time I would check in on the poll, there was never really a clear winner. It was like a different option was winning each time that I looked at it, just by a couple votes. It was never one option pulling way ahead of the other. So I decided after the poll had been up for a couple days, I was going to lock in with whatever option was winning at that time. And the option that was winning at that moment was the yes, no, maybe option. So that's what I planned to film. I got all my books together and was ready to sit down and film that video. But before I went to bed that night, I was curious and checked back in on the poll again, and at that moment the votes were completely evenly split 50-50. And then when I checked again the next morning, the other option of having me rank all the books I read this year was winning. Again, just by a couple votes. There was never one pulling way ahead of the other. So what I decided I would do, since the votes seem to be pretty evenly split the whole time the poll has been up, is I'm gonna kind of combine both video ideas. I'm gonna talk about these books in order. I have ranked them from my least to most favorite, but while I'm talking about each book, I'll give a brief overview of how I feel about it, some context on why I ranked it where I did, and then tell you guys yes, no, maybe if I would recommend it. So let's just jump right in. Before we get into the official ranking, I wanted to talk about the two books that I reread this year, because if I had to include them in the ranking, they probably would be at the number 1 and 2 spots. That's part of why they're rereads, because I love them so much. So I didn't want to have all this build up in the ranking video just for the number 1 and 2 books to be ones that you guys have heard me talk about a bunch on my channel and know that I love. I wanted my rankings to be all new books that I've read for the first time in 2025. So with that, my unofficial number 2 spot goes to Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I absolutely love this book. It was a 5-star the first time I read it, a 5-star the second time I read it. I reread this book in preparation for Carly Fortune's latest release that came out a few months ago at the beginning of the summer called One Golden Summer. That's because the character we follow in that book we were introduced to in this book. So I just wanted kind of a refresher on this character's backstory. I don't think it was necessary, but I just wanted that refresher, and I adore this book. It is, to me, the quintessential perfect summer romance. This book does get mixed reviews because of something that happens towards the end, but to me, I was so in it with the characters, I really understood where they were coming from, so it made sense to me. Even though I didn't love what happened or agree with it, I still adore this book, and it's a 5-star read for me, so I definitely would highly recommend it, and I still need to read One Golden Summer. And my unofficial number 1 spot would go to Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the second book in the Empyrean series, which I also reread in preparation for book 3 in this series, Onyx Storm. I'm still making my way through that book. I need to finish it, but this book is a 6-star read for me. I absolutely love and adore it. I loved it even more the second time around. I feel like that's kind of an unpopular opinion, but to me, I thought all aspects of this book were incredibly well done. I loved the fantasy, I loved the romance, I love the world building, I love the found family. Just everything about it was perfect to me, and on the reread I picked up on so many things that I missed the first time around. To me, no word was wasted in this book. Every single chapter had a purpose, something eventful happened in every chapter, and it kept me so engaged the whole way through. And I feel like for it being such a long book, that's not an easy thing for an author to accomplish, but I just thought this was extremely well written, and it has remained my favorite book in the series. We'll see if that changes once I finish Onyx Storm, but absolutely love this book, and if I had to do an official ranking, it would be my favorite that I read this year, but I'm not going to include it since it was a reread, and if you've been here, you guys know how much I love this book and would highly recommend it. So to start the official ranking of books that I've read for the first time in 2025, my least favorite book that I've read so far this year is The Couple's Trip by Ulf Flinzer. I think I'm saying that name correctly. This is a Swedish thriller translated into English, and I use the term thriller very loosely because this book was not thrilling whatsoever to me. I found it so boring and repetitive. It just dragged on and on and on. I was not interested in anything that was happening. I probably should have DNF'd this book, but I just wanted to know what happened at the end. I will say the ending was kind of worth it because it was somewhat satisfying, but overall was not a fan of this book. Would not recommend it because of how boring I found it, and it has remained remained my least favorite book since reading it. Next, I would have to put The Last Thing He Told Me by Lara Dave, another book that's marketed as a thriller that I use that term loosely because I don't find this thrilling at all. I am surprised that this book gets the hype that it does because I found it to be very, very bland. I was just expecting so much more out of it, and to me something was just missing. I actually have this book listed for sale in my Pango shop because I want to unhaul it. As soon as I read it, I was like, yeah, this is not for me. I didn't absolutely hate this book. There were moments and things about the book I enjoyed. I remember not minding our main character so much at some points in the story, but overall just found it to be very bland and boring, so no, would not recommend this. Daydream by Hannah Grace, sadly another disappointment for me. This is book 3 in her Maple Hills series following Icebreaker and Wildfire, which I loved books 1 and 2. I thought they were so much fun, so good, and I thought I was gonna love this book even more than those because our male main character is Henry. From the moment we met Henry in book 1, I loved him. He's so sweet, so funny, the comedic relief character, so I just knew I was gonna love and adore his book, but I just found it to be so bland and boring. Are we noticing a trend here? I appreciate that Hannah Grace has mature characters who communicate well with one another, but I just found myself wanting more like angst and tension out of it. I felt like there needed to be a little more conflict in the book to really keep me engaged, and there just wasn't really much. Again, bland, boring, would not recommend. Next, I have Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. Sadly, this whole series is not working for me. This is the 3rd book in the When in Rome series, and I haven't rated any of the books very highly. I think book 2 is definitely my favorite, but I feel like all of these books have just fallen flat. Something about this small town just feels underdeveloped, and none of the storylines really hook me. They brush over more heavy topics. They never really go very deep with it, so I just find myself not really caring, and I think all the characters I just find uninteresting, but it is all personal preference. I will say I loved the cheat sheet and the rule book by Sarah Adams. This series just isn't really working for me, but I know a lot of other people love it. However, since it's not working for me, I would not recommend it to anyone else. The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune sadly falls low on my list as well. This is one that I went into maybe with too high of expectations because I know so many people love it, and there were things I loved about it. I loved that our characters are these magical children. I found them to be so heartwarming and endearing and funny, but other parts of it, for a YA book especially, just felt extremely overly juvenile. I found that the themes that the author was trying to drive home to the reader just were so overtly spoon-fed to us, and I kind of wish they would have been a little bit more subtle. I would say maybe to recommending this one because I know it's worked for a lot of people. It just didn't work for me personally, so maybe if you're in the mood for this kind of book, I think a lot of people would enjoy it. Next, we have a book that I haven't yet talked about on my channel because I just finished up reading it actually last week, and that is The Wedding People by Alison Esbach. This one I went into, I think, with maybe too high of expectations. I knew before going into it that this book touches on very heavy, dark topics, but I'm the kind of person that doesn't usually need to look up trigger warnings, so I didn't think twice about starting it. And the first 100 pages of this book were so rough for me. I found it extremely dark, extremely depressing. I honestly had to take breaks from it because it was just putting me in the worst mood. I just found it to be even more triggering than I was expecting, so I'm glad I knew before going in that it touched on the things that it did, because to me it just went way darker and heavier than I thought it would. I also found the characters to be extremely insufferable. It was like each new character we would be introduced to was more insufferable than the last. There were moments that I enjoyed and I thought it was extremely well written, but overall, no, would not recommend this one. If you do pick it up, make sure you look up trigger warnings. You'll hear more about it at my August wrap up, and I know so many people love this book, but sadly it just did not work for me. The Ex-Wives Club by Sally Hepworth is a thriller novella that takes place at a restaurant. Sally Hepworth is one of my favorite authors, and she didn't put out a new full-length novel this year, so I will read anything that she writes. I enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed the restaurant setting, but I feel like it was just too quick to be anything that's really going to stick with me. I would say maybe to recommending this one if you're a fan of Sally Hepworth, or if you just want a quick thrilling little story, this would be a good one to pick up. But I don't think it's the best intro to Sally Hepworth to understand how her full-length novels are, because when she has more pages to tell a story, I feel like she develops things so well with such great humor and characterization. So I would say maybe I'm recommending that one. I enjoyed it in the moment, but nothing that really stuck with me. Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney was her release that came out this year, and I've read a few books by Alice Feeney now. The only one that I've really loved is rock, paper, scissors. I feel like every other book I've tried from her has just fallen flat, this one included. I liked it in the beginning, and I feel like somewhere along the way towards the middle, it just kind of lost me and became a bit convoluted, and I wasn't the biggest fan with how things played out. So I would not recommend this one. It's not really my favorite. If you haven't read Rock, Paper, Scissors by her, definitely would recommend checking that one out. Wild Side by Elsie Silver is the third book in her Rose Hill series. Sadly, this series just has not been hitting for me. It is a spin-off series to the Chestnut Springs series, which are cowboy romances, and I absolutely love and adore those books, but Rose Hill just is not feeling the same. I don't like the vibe of it. I haven't enjoyed really any of the characters or the stories all that much. They're okay. I've given all books somewhere in like the 3-star range for ratings, but nothing that I've absolutely loved, so I would not recommend this series from her. If you've not yet read Chestnut Springs, I would highly recommend those books instead. Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter is a YA rom-com that I feel like I went into with really high expectations because I hear nothing but great things about this book, and I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I kind of feel like the characters were written in almost a caricaturish way to where they didn't feel super realistic to me. There were certain moments that I enjoyed in this book. It did really read like a cutesy rom-com movie, so there were scenes that I had fun reading and did enjoy, but I think overall it just didn't really work for me. I never got super swept up or invested in the characters or what was happening to them. I would say maybe I'm recommending this one because I know so many people love it, and I think it's just unpopular opinion, personal preference, that it didn't completely work for me. All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I've read a few books by MZ now, and I'd say more of them have not worked for me than ones that have. She kind of follows the same structure in all of her books. I know she's known as Queen of the Slow Burn, which I love a slow burn romance, but I don't know if I love the way that she does it, to be completely honest. I just feel like the characters and their romance gets dragged out so much that by the time they get together, I don't really care, and I felt this way in a few of her books, that the couples feel more platonically involved than romantically involved, so they just don't completely work for me in that sense. But there are a lot of things about the story that I enjoy, and this one, I liked the setting. It takes place in the mountains in Colorado, and I enjoyed those vibes and the scenes of our main character hiking. To be honest, I would probably say no to recommending this one. If I had to recommend one of her books, it would be From Luke Off With Love. I did really enjoy that book. This one was just kind of in the middle for me. Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage is book 3 in her Rebel Blue Ranch series. These are small town cowboy romances. These books are cute and a fun time. They get compared to the Chestnut Springs series, and they definitely give me the cowboy romance fix that I have been wanting since finishing that series, but to me they don't even come close to how much I love Chestnut Springs. I would say maybe to recommending this one if you want a fast-paced, cute, quick, spicy cowboy romance set in a small town. Yes, but I don't think it's going to be your new favorite book or anything that you're absolutely obsessed with. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. These are a fun time to me in the moment, but nothing that really sticks with me long term. Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage is book 4 in her Rebel Blue Ranch series. I feel very similarly to this one as I do Lost and Lassoed, but I think I liked the characters and their story a little bit more than I liked book 3. To me, this one just had a little bit more depth, but I would say the same thing, maybe to recommending it depending on what you're looking for. Julie Is Dead by Leanne Zhang is a thriller following identical twin sisters where one twin steals the dead twin's identity, who just so happens to be a famous influencer. I really enjoyed this one. I would say maybe to recommending it if you liked Yellowface and Bunny. This book felt like a combination between those two books. It does get a little trippy and weird, so I don't think it's gonna work for everyone, but I do think it reeled things back in really nicely, and I ended up enjoying it overall. Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I have so many thoughts on this book. I actually have a reading blog where I read this. It was a blind date that I got with the book, so if you want to know more, I would recommend checking out that video. My opinions on this book are pretty mixed, I would say. At the beginning I wasn't a fan, but by the end I did get invested and was having a fun time with it, so I would say maybe to recommending it. I completely understand why people don't enjoy this one, and there are plenty of people that do, but on the flip side of that, there are lots of people who absolutely love this book and it was a 5-star read for them. So So I completely understand that side of things too. I'm somewhere in the middle. I completely see both ends of the spectrum. So I would say maybe to recommending this one. Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman is the third book in the Heartstopper series. These are YA graphic novels following a romance between Nick and Charlie as they also navigate difficult things when you're coming of age. And I think that it touches on real life hard topics in such a sensitive way. I think it's done so well. So I really would highly recommend these books. If you're looking for something sweet and heartwarming and you just need a pick-me-up, these books do that for me every single time that I read them. The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez is a novella set around Valentine's Day. It came out earlier this year around that time. I love Abby Jimenez. She is one of my favorite authors. I think she writes romances so well and perfectly combines the more hard-hitting, deep emotional topics with the more funny, lighthearted, humorous moments. She combines the two so well, and I just love everything that she writes. I was so impressed that even in a novella, she could give us a well thought out, developed story with complex characters. Definitely would recommend this one. If you just want a quick, fast-paced, easy to read romance, if you're looking to get into Abby Jimenez and you've never read from her before, I feel like this would give you a good taste at what her full-length novels are like. What Alice Forgot by Leanne Moriarty is actually the last book that I finished listening to on audio. I really enjoyed this one. It is like a suspenseful fiction book, I would say, which is kind of her genre, and it follows our main character Alice as she has a bad case of amnesia. It took me a minute to kind of figure out where this book was going, but kind of halfway through I could see what was going on, and I feel like it just told really good life lessons, and I enjoyed it and would recommend it. It's not my absolute favorite of Leanne Moriarty's, but I would honestly recommend all of her books that I've read. We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clywer. This is a psychological thriller, heavy on the psychological because this book plays so many mind games with you. I had such a good time reading this, and I think initially I rated it 3.75 stars, but I think back on it all the time, and it was the very first book that I read this year, so I probably would bump up my rating now to like a 4-star at least. I just think back on it so fondly. It was so fun. It was so trippy. It really got me hooked and engaged in the book while I was reading. And yes, it is one I would highly recommend. I would wait until the winter time to read it because it has a very atmospheric, snowy setting. Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber is the start to a new trilogy by her. It's the spin-off series to the Caraval trilogy, and I was so excited because I loved the Caraval trilogy and I'd heard that people loved this series even more. To me, this just felt like Caraval 2.0, which I liked. I love her whimsical, magical writing style, but it kind of felt like there was a lot going on, and I honestly preferred the Caraval books over this one, so it didn't really make me want to keep going. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy the series as much as I loved Caraval, so I would say maybe to recommending it. I feel like the majority of people do like this series over Caraval, but I would recommend Caraval over this book so far from what I've read. Which brings us to Finale by Stephanie Garber, the last book in the Caraval trilogy, which I did enjoy more than Once Upon a Broken Heart. I just love this trilogy so much. I think it's so fun, so whimsical, so magical, and I love the sister relationships that we get to explore in here. The romance and the love triangles are also very interesting and kept me hooked, and I just thought this was the perfect way to end the Caraval trilogy. Flow Plan by Trish Dollar is a pretty recent read for me. I read it at the beginning of this month. It wasn't on my August TBR, but so many people commented on my August TBR video telling me they love this book, so I decided to give it a try, and I'm so glad I did. It is a very emotional, heartfelt romance. It touches on the topic of grief, and it really depicted it so well, I thought. Especially a lot of the complicated, conflicting emotions surrounding grief, I thought were done extremely well. I loved the male main character in this book, and I also loved the setting. I thought them being out at sea on this sailboat, visiting various islands in the Caribbean was so fun, so I definitely would recommend this one. The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters follows two characters in two different timelines, and we're trying to figure out how those two stories may or may not come together. I really unexpectedly enjoyed this one. It is a slower paced book and not my usual kind of read, but I was really in it the whole way through. Even though it's kind of obvious, I think, from the very start what is going on, I was still interested to see how everything would unfold. I would say I maybe recommend this one. I don't think it will be for everyone. It is a slower paced kind of historical fiction book, so if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, I would recommend it, but again, I don't think it's gonna be for absolutely everyone. Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett is a YA summer romance that I had so much fun reading. It was all the perfect summer vibes. It dealt with tough topics, but it balanced it perfectly without taking away from the lightheartedness of this book. I love this subplot of our main character chatting online anonymously to this guy and trying to figure out who he was in real life. Alex approximately, I feel, gave me what I wanted from Better Than the Movies but didn't get. The characters in this to me were written so realistically, like actual teenagers, so I connected with it a lot more. So yes, I definitely would recommend this if you're looking for a cute YA summer rom-com. Rewind It Back by Liz Tomford is the last book in the Windy City series. I'm so sad this series is over because I've loved it so much. These are professional sports romances, and this last book, Rewind It Back, follows Rio. He was a character who I was highly anticipating his book from the moment we met him all the way back in book 1. I do think I wanted a little more out of his story. I was hoping for more. I thought it would be my very favorite. I kind of have unpopular opinions when it comes to my favorites in this series. I think my very favorite is book 1, Mile High. The fan favorite of this series I think is probably book number 2, The Right Move, and that is my second favorite in the series. I love that one as well. Books 3 and 4 were just somewhere in the middle for me, but I did really like Rio's book. I would say it's probably my third favorite of the series. I hope to enjoy it a little bit more than I did, but it was still a good time. And I would definitely recommend the Windy City series as a whole. If you've not yet picked it up and you love sports romances, you need to give these books a try. Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood was her first YA romance, and I thought it was done so well. I was really impressed by this book. I thought the story was so well written. The characters felt incredibly well developed and had so much depth to them. This romance centers around chess, but I think even if you know nothing about chess and it doesn't interest you at all, this book you would still find fascinating, because that was definitely the case for me. I definitely would recommend this book to everyone. I think even if you've tried Ali Hazelwood in the past, whether you loved her, didn't love her, I would still give this one a try, because to me it had things about her previous books in it that I loved. It still had that unique Ali Hazelwood voice to her writing style, but it also didn't feel like her previous women in STEM romances. So I think whatever way you felt about her books in the past, if you've not yet given this one a try, I would recommend it. In an Instant by Suzanne Redfern is one that I went into completely blindly, knew nothing about, had never heard anyone talk about this book, but I got it as a blind date with the book for the same video I talked about earlier, and I absolutely loved it. We followed the aftermath of this really bad accident involving this family and their group of friends, and we see different secrets being uncovered and different relationship dynamics are explored within the group. It was just done extremely well in my opinion, so yes, I would highly recommend this one. Just know going in, it is a bit heavier and emotional, but there are a lot of uplifting moments to it as well. Margot's Got Money Troubles by Ruthie Thorpe. This one I saw going around everywhere and I was so intrigued, but I didn't know if it would be for me. We follow Margot, who is a young woman that accidentally gets pregnant and then starts an OnlyFans to be able to make money. This one took me a bit to get into. I listened to it on audio, and I would highly recommend the audio because it's narrated by Elle Fanning, who I believe is actually going to be playing Margot in the TV adaptation, which I think is going to be perfect. But I ended up loving it the more that I listened. I just got more and more invested in these characters and their story, and by the end I really loved it, so I definitely would highly recommend this one. Middle of the Night by Riley Sager is a thriller set in the 90s in the summertime in this very suburban setting. We're following the disappearance of this young boy who went missing years ago, and now it's become a cold case. We follow his best friend who was with him the night he disappeared and see him many years later as a grown man. I really liked getting all the different POVs in this book. I feel like it made it different to other Riley Sager books that I've read, and this wasn't my very favorite of his, but I did really enjoy it. I'd probably put it somewhere in the middle when it comes to how I've ranked his books, and I've read almost all of them, so I would recommend this one. Adelaide by Genevieve Wheeler follows our main character Adelaide and her kind of situationship. I feel like it was a very realistic depiction of modern day dating. This book got compared to Normal People a lot, which is one of my favorite books ever, which is why I decided to pick it up, and I really enjoyed it. It wasn't my absolute favorite book ever, but I did really enjoy Adelaide, and I really felt for her while I was reading. I felt every emotion along with her and was so invested in her story. It's definitely a character driven story, so I would say maybe I'm recommending it. If it sounds like it would be up your alley, give it a try, but if it doesn't sound like the kind of book you'd be into at all, I think I would pass on this one. Emma of 83rd Street by Audrey Belleza and Emily Harding. This is the start to a series of books that are all retellings of Jane Austen novels. This is a modern day retelling of Emma, and I had the best time with this one. I really enjoyed Emma. I thought she was a very well written, complex character, and it was so fun to follow her. I really liked the romance in this book. If you enjoy Jane Austen, even even if not, I think this just works well on its own as a contemporary romance, and I would recommend it. The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. I love the Magnolia Park series by Jessa Hastings, so I wasn't sure how I would feel about something outside of that series by her, but I really loved this one. In this book, we follow our main character, Georgia, and we explore both a romance that she has with a guy in this book, as well as her relationship with her family members, which is very complex. A lot of interesting dynamics going on, and there's a lot of drama involved, and I really enjoyed both the family drama as well as the romance. I was entertained by both parts of the story, and this is one I definitely would recommend no matter how you felt about Jessa's books in the past, whether you've read Magnolia Parks and liked it, disliked it, or if you've never read from her at all. I still think you should pick this book up because to me it has the same things about Magnolia Parks that I love, which is the complex characters and relationships and writing style, but it didn't feel as toxic as Magnolia Parks and those characters are, if that's what puts you off from her other books. I still would give this one a try. I really enjoyed it. The Switch by Beth O'Leary follows two women. We have Lena, a young woman in her 20s, and her grandmother Eileen. Lena lives in London, in the big city. She has a corporate job, and then her grandmother Eileen lives a very rural suburban life out in the country, and we see the two of them swap lives, and I loved this so much. I was really rooting for the characters. I wanted them to thrive. I loved the things that they learned when they switched places. So yes, I would highly recommend this one if you want an uplifting story. It was so heartwarming. The Lost Ticket by Freya Sampson follows our main character Libby. She meets this older man one day on the bus, and he tells her the story of this woman who he met back in the day, had this really strong connection with, and they were supposed to go on a date, but he lost her number, and so now Libby wants to help him find his long lost love. And it was just so heartwarming, so uplifting. You see all these unlikely characters who are so different from one another come together for a common cause to help this man, and it was just so sweet to read about. Could not recommend this enough. You have to pick it up if you've not yet read it. If you want something that will restore your faith in humanity, I think this will definitely do it for you. I started the ACOTAR series and read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas all the way back in January, and I definitely see the hype with this one. I thought this was a very solid romantasy. I liked that the romance didn't really overshadow the fantasy. I was enjoying the storyline a lot, and I thought the romance was the perfect amount mixed in with the fantasy storyline, so I totally see the hype. I've not yet continued on with the series after starting this one, but I plan to, and I am excited to when I finally have the time to continue on. Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. This follows a group of characters who are all very different from one another, and we see how they all react when they're placed in this hostage situation. I think if you've never read a Frederick Bachman book before, this would be such a good one to pick up because it kind of encapsulates what I think he does so well. He combines very deep, hard-hitting life lessons in his books with silly, quirky, goofy kind of humor, and I think it's just the perfect balance, and this book did that so well. I had a really good time with this one. I really liked the deep life lessons and also the humor. I did think at times it could have cut back on the humor just a little bit, and I wanted it to be a bit more serious, but I really liked where things went with this. I was so interested to know where it was going to go, and it really impressed me by the time I finished reading it. Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry is quite a departure, I would say, from her previous books, but it definitely worked for me. I loved both storylines we got in here. I loved this subplot of this heiress, Margaret, getting her story, learning why she's been tucked away from the public for a while and why no one has seen or heard from her. But I also loved this rivalry and this romance between Alice and Hayden as they were both fighting for a chance to tell Margaret's story. I would say maybe I'm recommending this one. I think it's one you just kind of have to pick up for yourself and see if it will work for you because it gets so many mixed reviews. I personally loved it, but I can also see on the other end why someone would not enjoy it quite as much because I do think it feels different to Emily Henry's other books. This book was not quite a 5-star for me. I felt like when I put this book down, I wasn't really thinking about it, and it hasn't stuck with me too much, but while I was reading, I did get the 5-star feeling at moments. So I didn't quite give it the full 5 stars, even though I got that when I was reading. It's just that when I put the book down, it wasn't one I was thinking back on or wanting to pick up right away. It did take a little bit of like motivating myself to jump back in, but overall, did really love this one. The Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez is a pretty recent read for me. I wanted to make my way through her backlist because she's one of my favorite romance authors. I loved this book so much. It's the second book in her Friend Zone series. I was really curious to see how this book was going to play out based on some things things that happened in the first book, and I was kind of hesitant. I think that's why I stayed away from this book for a while, but I was so impressed with the way Abby Jimenez wrote this topic. I thought it was done extremely well. I loved the romance. Abby Jimenez writes the most perfect men in her books. I don't know how she does it, but I'm obsessed every single time. The romance just always hits. The only thing I didn't love about this book, and the thing that kept it from being a 5-star for me, was the third act conflict. I just was not a fan at all, but everything else about this book I really loved. I would say maybe to recommending this book. I know it's the fan favorite of the series, but I also think it's very reminiscent of her newest release, Say You'll Remember Me, because it kind of had this will they or won't they. There were so many things keeping these characters apart. I almost felt like they might not end up together because there were just so many factors involved. And there also is a hard-hitting, heavier topic to this book that's very sad that plays a big role in the story. So I would say maybe. I know her latest release has gotten a lot of mixed reviews, and this one reminded me of that one for similar reasons. So I don't think it will work for everyone, but I absolutely loved it. Okay, now we're getting into all of my 5-star reads. 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This one took me a few times of starting and stopping it to finally get into it, but once I got to the part where our two main characters reunite, it completely turned things around for me. This is a second chance romance following two writers who have been writing books about one another for years, and when they reunite, they confront one another about that, and we follow things from there. And I absolutely love this book. I'm so glad that I pushed through. It did, like I said, take me a bit to get into, but once I did, I was obsessed with everything about this book, from the romance to the side characters to the storyline to the funny, humorous moments in here. Just everything about it was so good to me. I could not recommend this one enough. Just know if you start it and it takes you a bit to get into, just give it some time, because once I got to Eva and Shane's reunion, like I said, that's when things really turned around for me, and I think the book does a complete 180 from there to the end. The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. No one is more surprised than me at how I rated this book. I feel like I've rated all of their books across the board because they all feel so different to me. I never know what I'm gonna get out of a Christina Lauren book. Christina Lauren are actually two authors, Christina and Lauren, and sometimes I feel like I can tell when I'm reading their books. They don't always feel super cohesive, and I don't always feel like they have the most distinct voice. So I just never know what to expect when I pick up one of their books. But I was really excited to read this one. I'd heard it was such a good summertime rom-com, and it was one of the best rom-coms I've ever read. It had the perfect balance of everything that I want when I'm reading a rom-com. It had the emotional depth. I loved the characters. Our female main character, Anna, was absolutely hilarious. Our male main character, Liam, I was obsessed with, and how down bad he was for Anna. All the little moments between them leading up to their real romance was just so perfect. The tension was everything. I also loved the storyline that we got in here, following Liam and his family and the drama. There's so much going on outside of the romance, and I was just so entertained by that part of the book as well. I thought everything just came together perfectly. I was obsessed. The perfect summertime vacation read. I just could not recommend this book enough. I am absolutely obsessed, and it is one of my favorite books that I've read all year long. The Hotel Nantucket by Ellen Hildebrand. This was my first Ellen Hildebrand book, and definitely will not be my last. I cannot believe it took me so long to pick up and try one of her books, because I absolutely loved the writing style. This one follows the Hotel Nantucket. It's being renovated and opened after this building being many things over the years. People have kind of said the building is cursed, and that's why everything that it's turned into hasn't really worked out until now. And we follow some of the guests as well as the staff members at this hotel. I just absolutely loved this hotel setting on Nantucket. It felt so magical to me. All the bars and restaurants and shops on the island that got name dropped made me want to visit so badly so that I could relive this book in real life. And now I actually really am trying to plan a Nantucket trip, because I've never wanted to insert myself into a story more than I did this one. I was just obsessed, and I loved following all these unique characters and seeing all the different things they brought to the hotel and how everything came together at the end. This had mystery, romance, adventure, all combined perfectly. I could not recommend this one enough. Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez is her release from earlier this year that, like I mentioned, got very mixed reviews. And I completely understand why, but to me, the thing that kind of solidified how much I love this book is that it had things I normally don't love in books. The trope was insta-love. It had a lot of references to pop culture, but somehow Abby Jimenez just wrote it in a way where I could overlook it and didn't care because of how much I was loving everything else about the book. I loved the romance. I loved this deep, complex, emotional storyline. I really wasn't sure if they were going to be able to work things out and be together in the end, so it just kept me hooked the whole way through. Abby Jimenez is just one of my favorite romance authors ever. Something about her writing style just works perfectly for me, and I eat everything up. So I know this didn't work for a lot of people. I would say maybe to recommending it because I completely understand the negative reviews, but also with how much I loved it, I think there's other people out there who would love it as much as me and give it 5 stars too. So take my review with a grain of salt, but this one is one of my favorites of the year for sure. Speaking of favorites, The Favorites by Lane Fargo is one of mine, and I am obsessed with this book. We follow 2 ice dancers who had a very tumultuous relationship, and we follow their lives, both personal and professional, over the years as they kind of like rise and fall in the public eye. Oh my gosh, this book gets compared to so many things, and I feel like all the comparisons are very accurate. This is very reminiscent of a Taylor Jenkins Reid book, but without feeling like it was trying to be anything else. It still felt like its own story. I was so hooked the whole way through. The drama, just when I thought it couldn't get crazier, the next chapter would go a step further, and I was so enthralled the entire time that I was reading. The way the characters and the events in this book were written felt so realistic. I had to stop myself from Googling certain things at different times and remind myself that this was a fictional book because it just came to life and truly jumped off the page. And to be honest, the majority of the time I was reading this, I wasn't completely sure if it was going to be a 5-star read, but the ending really solidified my rating because it was just so satisfying and so true to the characters and the rest of the story. And I just loved the way everything wrapped up. I thought it couldn't have been more perfectly written. I went into this with high expectations and they were exceeded, so I would highly recommend this book. Okay, and then drum roll for my very favorite book that I've read so far this year. That is The Wish by Nicholas Sparks. This is my first Nicholas Sparks book. I didn't know what to expect. If anything, I kind of thought I might hate this book just because I know that the movies based on his books that I've seen are just very cliche, very formulaic, very grand romantic gestures, which isn't normally what I love in a romance book because it doesn't feel realistic. But when people described this book, it just sounded different to his usual romance. It sounded like there was a lot more to the story. So I decided to give it a try. I'd heard it recommended to read around the New Year, so I did pick it up in January, and I'm so glad that I did. In this book, we follow our main character Maggie in 2 different timelines. In the present, we see Maggie is a travel photographer who runs her own gallery. She's just hired a young man who she has a special bond with, and they really confide in one another about different things. One of the things she starts telling this young man is of a Christmas in her past that had a very profound impact on her life, and that becomes our past timeline in the book. Oh my gosh, I thought I knew where things were going, but it completely blindsided me by the end. I could not recommend this one enough. Definitely make sure you have tissues though, because it is the biggest tearjerker. I was sobbing uncontrollably by the end, and I just thought it was so incredible. By far my favorite book that I've read this year. I think it's gonna be pretty hard to top, especially since I read this all the way back in January and it's remained my #1. So we will see if anything dethrones the title of favorite, but for now it is The Wish by Nicholas Sparks. So those are all 50 books that I read so far this year, ranked from my least to most favorite. I feel like I've been yapping for so long, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you give me a thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed, be sure to hit the red button down below to stick around. I would love to have you guys here. Let me know what some of your favorite and least favorite books of the year have been. If you agree or disagree with any of my ratings, I would love to chat with you guys down below in the comments. Thank you all so much for being here and for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys.